You've seen other people ride it. Oh wait, not those other people, these other people. You've seen other people review it. But now, it's my turn. And for those of you who love to complain about this in the comments, you can finally rest content. For the first time ever, I didn't end up changing a single component from the stock build. Big kudos to Ibis.
All right, we are rolling.
Hello everyone, I've got many comments from all of you down below asking to ride this very bike. And I've been very lucky that Ibis loaned me a sample bike for the next couple of weeks. So let's pop it open and see what we're looking at.
This is what you're waiting for. I think we're ready to rock.
I still haven't seen one of these bikes in real life yet, ever. This is truly a first look. I looked in the handles and I couldn't see anything, just packing material, so we're all coming into this blind. Oh, this is the bike. Ooh, dang, Ibis has gotten so much more pro with their packing. Cool.
Quite the reveal.
Do I know how to use dropper seat posts? There it is, okay. Okay, now we can get this thing done. So Nate wrote me a note. Give it hell, JKW. Nate's a good dude. Chain. I wonder where that goes. All right, that's a huge fork. I'm actually pretty stoked this thing is like so disassembled. I feel like you get to know a bike a lot better when you do a little bit of wrenching on it. And if I'm actually gonna call these videos reviews, they kind of are. I wanna actually know these bikes a little bit, so that's good. Cool, Ibis wheels with double down tires, nice. This is the first bike all year that I have not had to swap tires out on. That's a home run.
Jeff, what's a home run?
I think that's when you get a goal with the first kick. I don't know, I don't play hockey, so I might have been wrong. I didn't just look for the second end cap, I found it. Thanks for the note, Nate.
Is that a home run?
No. Ibis made a significant pivot as a company, suddenly redefining themselves as a racing-focused brand. This move kind of perplexes me as I do love Ibis bikes, but I'm absolutely not a racer myself. Now we have the HD6 to show from this new ethos, so lovers of long travel can finally rejoice. The 6 in HD6 does not refer to suspension travel, wheel size, or one shy of perfection. In this case, it's the 6th iteration of what began as the Mojo HD. That bike first launched in 2009. 14 years later, that whole big bike that climbs like a little bike idea has gone from preposterous to perfected. So for those of you unfamiliar, this is the longest travel non-e-bike Ibis has ever released. It's a 180/165 travel enduro bike. The old Mojo HD160, we had a 180 fork option back in the day. This is a 180/165, so a touch more travel than the HD160 we all enjoyed so much. I was lucky enough to receive this loaner media bike in August. I had just broken my foot a few days before the bike arrived, but I quickly utilized my favorite form of physical therapy to start working on recovery. And that meant many, many miles aboard the HD6. Trying to find a safe groove, I rode the bike daily for a few weeks, getting quite familiar with the mullet wheels and the big front end. I had to ride in clips for the first time since 2019, and that ended up being a really nice change. That's an important detail, and we'll discuss a little bit more later on. The highlight of my summer riding on the HD6 was a dusty road trip along the Sunshine Coast. I very carefully transported this loaner HD6 aboard my KTM adventure bike, camping every night next to another ridiculously fun trail. That trip was awesome, but it did have me thinking about the true purpose of the bike. This is Ibis's mullet bike. It came with a spider on the back. Look at that hairy little spider.
Hello, friend.
This bike was sitting at Ibis's HQ long enough to get cobwebbed. Man, looking at this bike, it's a lot burlier than I was expecting it to be, which is cool. There's some interesting things going on with the geometry. The back end has the same 435mm chainstay as a Ripmo, but with a smaller wheel in it. I guess part of the goal of that was to keep the bike feeling like it has a good centralized equilibrium. So it should be a very intuitive bike to ride down the trail. Hope that's the case. 170 crank arms. Ooh, Industry 9 stem, cool. For those of you that aren't aware, I worked at Ibis from 2008 until 2015. Started in the warehouse, eventually made it up to inside sales, had a great time, really enjoyed all my experiences at Ibis. Still love their bikes to this day. So it's cool to see how far they've come since 15 years ago. That sounds like a long time ago. Shit. Look at that little 27.5 back wheel. There's huge props to Ibis for the double down tires front and rear. That's so rare. For a bike like this, it's exactly what you need. It's hard when like such a small percentage of your actual buyers truly need that tire spec, and then it makes the bike 2 pounds heavier, and then the yahoos that want the cool bike but don't really have like the terrain nearby to really necessitate it, they are disappointed. But the dudes that really shred are stoked. So what do? Don't need to risk that ability. I'm actually gonna be riding clipless pedals for the next month or so here, so I'm gonna find some clips and toss them on here. Generally, Ibis builds their bikes around these Arundel cages. These things are pretty sweet, but they're kind of hard to find. You kind of can only get them from a few websites. Jensen USA had this Lezyne water bottle cage in stock. I worked at Lezyne for the summer of 2008, and it looks like it'll fit down here. So in an effort to try something different, I'm gonna bolt up this Lezyne cage and we'll see how it does on the HD6. Okay, that's tight enough. That's not going anywhere. The bike's almost put together, but before we do get our first couple rides in, let's take a quick second to thank Jensen USA, who made this video possible. Jensen's a leading online retailer here in the USA for Ibis bikes, as well as a bunch of other top high-end mountain bike brands. I've got a link down in the description below to all the Ibis bikes that Jensen USA currently has in stock and available now. Anything you do purchase from that link will directly help support my channel. It's a big part of how we make these videos happen. So if you enjoy this video and you only need chain lube, if you could get that through Jensen, that'll let Jensen know that A, you're real, and B, you enjoy my videos. So big thanks to Jensen USA for making this all happen. We're looking at about a 160 drop seat post. Yikes. Hi-ya! As things tend to be in the summer, all was great. I was fit, tan, and never got caught once in the rain without a jacket. I was feeling good on the HD6, loving that long travel and bike park life. Then the stock X2 rear shock gave up the goose. That was in early September, and that's also why you won't see it at Whistler. As it goes, it took over a month for Fox to get me a replacement shock. So the bike sat, taunting me that I had a chance to review it, yet that chance was quickly slipping out of my calloused fingers. Eventually, Fox got me set up with a replacement shock and a couple other fun options to try out. So now I've ridden the bike not just with the stock Float X2, but also with the coil-sprung DHX and the little Float X. What's my opinion of the bike? Well, if I feel like sending it big enough to risk my ability to lift things overhead, I grab the HD6. With the HD6, I can find some wild gaps and sometimes clear some pretty silly stuff. The coil shock is very compatible with the bike and works well, but not a ton better than the stock X2. I can't say I have a preference between those two. Currently, I have the Float X on there, and as usual, that's probably my favorite option. However, none of these really change the mannerisms of the bike all that much. Don't get too caught up in upgrading the rear shock. That seems to matter more on other suspension platforms. Climbing on the HD6, well, to be frank, this is my least favorite Ibis bike to climb. Despite the numbers, the bike feels very long, so it's a handful on any switchbacks or technical bits of climbing. It wasn't built for that, it's just supposed to get up the hills, and it definitely does that. I do notice a lot more efficiency if I lock out the rear shock, and that's something I really don't want to do. In fact, once I went back to flat pedals, I started to ride my SB160 more than the HD6. Between the 27.5 rear wheel and the grip over grind focused rear suspension, I'd kind of rather ride something across town or up a mountain that just feels more efficient. The SB160 does feel a little bit more like an escalator for those steep climbs. The HD6 jumps better than any 180 travel bike should. I found it to balance maneuverability with stability in a nice manner, though it's nowhere near the couch's stability as the lengthy transition Spire. I do kind of like that playful aspect of the shorter chainstays on the Ibis. The HD6 is also more predictable than the Pivot Firebird, but not as good of a pedaler or an all-arounder. True to Ibis's new ethos, the HD6 is definitely race-oriented. The detail is that it's race-oriented at a professional level for someone who's racing on the very gnarliest of circuits. For more local races, it's quite likely too much bike. My unpopular opinion is that races are won and lost by carrying momentum and speed, and that's something a smaller bike like the Ripmo, in my opinion, does just a little bit better. Yeah. For the first time ever, and I do mean ever, I was able to leave this bike completely stock. The stock tires are double down units from Axis, which are the lightest tires I personally feel safe riding. The stock Ibis wheels have been holding up quite well to my uses. The frame is expertly designed, the bolts stay tight, it's easy to work on, and the extra features of the tool holder and that universal derailleur hanger are all pretty cool and quite future-proof. Backing up a little bit, I felt like I could recommend the old HD3 to anyone, and the reviews I got back from regular folk were extremely positive. That bike worked for so many regular riders to use as a daily driver. The HD4, while I much preferred it over the HD3, was less warmly received by those same regular riders. Same with the HD5. I would recommend both the HD4 and 5 to folks that wanted a bike more purpose-built for the NAR, whereas the old HD3 was more multifaceted. With that new HD6, well, it takes that race ethos and amplifies it to a whole new level. When comparing it to the Ritmo, the Bronson, the SP140, the Switchblade, all the smaller bikes, the HD6 does feel significantly bigger. Sort of like the Transition Spire, the HD6 means you really gotta work hard to get the bike up in the air, and if you're not riding something double or triple black diamond, well, you're probably not pushing the bike anywhere close to its limit. As the winter rains began to fall, I transitioned back to my usual flat pedals, and trail speed significantly decreased. If the rain did anything, it simply amplified the bike's desire to only ride the gnarliest of stuff. If you're on a mellow trail and it's slow rolling and wet out, well, it's gonna be a bit more of a trudge than on a smaller bike. For high-speed, gnarly, and steep trails, the HD6 excels. But as an all-around bike, well, for me and my style, I'd generally rather go smaller. For its intended purpose of enduro racing at the highest professional level, well, the HD6 is an amazing bike. But that's not really the kind of bike I'm really looking for. The HD6 is quite simply beat by another bike, and that's the Ibis Ritmo Carbon. There's a time when something gets over-perfected, and in the case of the HD6, it might be too perfect for the ordinary trail rider.
One key detail when you get a bike like this, it's not something you gotta work hard on putting together. When you get a bike from Jensen USA, it comes pre-built, and getting it onto the trail is pretty much just putting on the front wheel. It's very quick and easy. It's not the build process I just went through, and this still wasn't too bad. Hit that link in the description below to learn more about the Ibis HD6 as well as the rest of the Ibis lineup currently available at Jensen USA. Thanks, Jensen.
If you've enjoyed this video, please click that subscribe button just below and let me know down in those handy comments if you're looking for an enduro race bike, a trail bike, or just looking for a good time. Peace and wheelies, everyone.